got a PRS 2-channel C that just came in. It doesn't power on. As the description says, no sound, no light, no power, no fun. Now, it's probably just a blown mains fuse, but I need to see why that mains fuse blew. I'm not just going to feed it a new fuse and send it on its merry way. You know, that might actually be all that's needed, but I'm going to find out. It's protect their investment. Okay, let's see what's going on with this. This is the rear view, and it's missing some washers that would have been here, so I'm not the first to open it up. Let's see what's going on. When I first opened this up, I got a whiff of a burning smell, but now I don't see anything in there that's burned, or I cannot localize it with my nose. That's a very important tool to have. Now, I suspect that I'm not the first person in here. I'll tell you why. It's got tube store labeled JJ EL34s. That's not what this amp would have shipped with. This says it's one of the first 50. It's got PRS's signature on it. Hey, Paul, if you see this. Let's see, where's my pointer? Here we go. It's from 12/2/2010, so it's 11 years old-ish. Someone has replaced the diodes here. Either that or this one was built better from the factory than others. They use 1N4148 diodes in this series, which fail a lot, like a lot. This one's got 1N4007s where instead of the 4148s. So either someone has done that, not a very neat job, but certainly just the same as the factory, or this was a change at the factory. There's some burned film caps throughout. In my experience, sadly, that's factory for this model. These things are not built very well. I don't think they're designed very well. It's a fake eyelet design. It's a PCB, and the traces on these things are just tissue paper thin, and they don't hold up to repeated resoldering. And the circuit's not that great, but let's see why it's blowing fuses. I assume it is blowing a fuse. Let's take a look and see what's in the fuses themselves. All right, the mains fuse is in this little drawer here. It should be a 3-amp slow blow. Pop that out. Some of them pop out from the top, some from the bottom. Oops. And let's see what's in here. It is blown, and it is a 3-amp. Let's see if it's a fast blow or a slow blow. It should be slow. Some people, guys don't pay attention to that thing. A fast blow will fail where a slow blow would not. This is a fast blow. It's a 3-amp fast blow. Let's see what's in the spare holder here, just in case this is not its first tube being fed. I mean, not tube, fuse. And I'll show you how I can tell when a fuse is a slow blow from the print, if I can get this thing to come out. It's always tough to do this when the camera's rolling. Some drawers you have better access from the bottom. Let's see here what this says. All right, this one doesn't say T on it. I get a different 3-amp fuse. See if I can show you that marking. My big box O fuses. Let's see, those are the 4 amps. I think these are my 3s. All right, I got a 3.15 amp fuse, which is fine. No amp is going to catch on fire because of a 0.15 amp difference. Fusing is not an exact science. All right, so here, the old 3-amp fuse, let's see if I can get where the thing is, just says 3 amps, 250 volt. The new one that I'm putting in here, and the new spare, says T, 3.15 amp. That T stands for time delay, so it's getting a time delay fuse. It's the spare and a time delay fuse for its mains fuse. because the amp can be completely healthy and still blow a fast blow fuse. You want to use a slow blow. Now let's check whether the proper 1 amp slow blow 3AG fuse is in here for the HT supply. Now you can see that this fuse holder's got a little bit of a chew mark from someone changing it. If I reach for this screwdriver, that's how you chew it up. This screwdriver blade is too small for that slot. If I use this screwdriver, the blade fits precisely. There are standardized blade sizes, and when you have a slot for one of these, you match to that if you love your amp. And this is a 3 amp fuse where it should have a 1 amp fuse. So that's no good. Doesn't matter if it's fast or slow blow in this spot, it's a no blow. A 3 amp fuse offers no protection in an amp that should have a 1 amp fuse in that spot. So let's put the 3 back. Let's get a new 1 amp 3AG fuse. Now it's interesting to me that this amp has a 5x20 here and a 3AG here. Maybe it's so that you don't mix and match which ones they are, but in general, if I was doing an amp with 5x20, I'd have a 5x20 here. If this was 3AG, I'd use a different fuse holder. So this one is a MDL. DL is also delay, 1 amp. So this is a slow blow, 1 amp, 5x20 fuse. Not 5x20, 3AG fuse. And this will actually give some protection, unlike the 3 amp that was in there. So now with the proper 1 amp fuse protecting the HT supply, which is the high voltage, the B+. I know there are a lot of confusing terms that don't mean anything to guitarists. I'll do a video on all that stuff, translating real world stuff later. Anyway, this is the B+ that actually gives high voltage DC to all the tubes. And this mains fuse, this 3 amp slow blow, is what protects the overall amp. If any of the secondaries on the power transformer are drawing too much current, this shuts down, or if there were to be a short on the primary. All right, so now that that is sorted out as far as the fuses go, let's plug a speaker jack in, speaker out, 8 ohms. Let's connect an IC cable. And I'm going to reposition the camera before I do the next bit, because if there is anything that was causing that burn smell that I smelled, I want to see if there's any smoke, and maybe you guys will see it too. But the power just went out. That's awesome. So maybe a little bit of a delay before we can get to that. This is the second time today the power in our neighborhood has gone out. So let me reposition this tripod, get everything set up, and maybe we'll have some power and we can finish this video. I can finish some work, because with the power off, my soldering iron is useless. Or maybe it's the world's way of telling me to take a break. I've been going since about 8:30 this morning constantly. Thank you. That's my wife, Nikki. She's lovely. I should put her in these videos that have infinitely more views and more subscribers. Okay, and here's where I have to pause until we have power again, and then we'll find out if we have the magic smoke. Ooh, talk about your cliffhangers. Okay, the utility company said, let there be light, and there was, and it is good. So let's turn on power to this amp now and see what happens. Now I've got a current limiter on here, so if there is a fault, because I did smell something burny, something toasty, it's not going to blow these fuses most likely. I'll have a warning. Let's take it from off to standby. All right, there's a momentary increase in current draw, then it fades down, which is normal, because when you first power an amp on, those filter caps read as a dead short. But then as they begin to cycle back and forth, they're no longer a short. They're behaving normally. So far, so good. Let me turn the masters down before I bring it out of standby, just so we don't hear any blast just in case there's some other issue. Volume off, treble, middle, bass, noon, volume off, treble, middle, bass, noon, reverb off. What does this say? Lead master off, clean master off. Okay, now when I flip this up, right now in standby, there's almost no current being drawn. That means all the filter caps have stabilized. Let's take it out of standby and look and see what happens. All right, there's a very moderate current draw from the wall. I'm watching the output tubes. I can't show all this at once. And I'm hoping I don't see or detect anything wrong, but if something is going to smoke, it'd be a real nice time to do it now while I'm looking. Sometimes it takes a while for something to get hot enough to exhibit the failure. And I've had resistors start to burn after 10 minutes of being on, and there's nothing visibly wrong with them, but they just let out smoke. It's a cool thing. So far, so good. I'll verify the bias is set correctly on this thing. It's got bias measurement points. I don't use that, but I'll probably show that in this video, show how they work in this video, just to give a little bit of added value to things. So far, no smoke. So Cheech and Chong would be very disappointed. Let's plug the guitar into this and see what happens. Then on the other channel, well, it is not my favorite sounding amp, but it sounds exactly like a healthy 2-channel C. So let me pause this. I'm going to confirm the bias is good, and then I will show you how to use these bias jacks to confirm that for yourself if you have such a thing. All right, got this thing with 120 volts coming in the mains, and as the bias is now, the left tube is idling at 40.7% dissipation, and the right tube is idling at 46%. Now they've got these bias jacks here, and it also says underneath that, adjustments, let me get that focused for you. Adjustments only to be made by a qualified technician. Asides from the iffy grammar there, if this is for only qualified techs, why have these external bias jacks? Most techs don't need them. Most users are going to be tempted to try these things. And the bias trim pots down here, you've got individual bias sensing points for each output tube's cathode. It's just got a 1 ohm resistor to ground on either side, but just a single turn pot. So according to my bias measurements, this tube on the left is drawing, there's my current, 22 milliamps, and the one on the right is actually 22.1 milliamps, and the one on the right is drawing 25. What does the meter say when I measure here? Is this going to measure 21? 22.1? No, it's going to measure 27 milliamps. It's actually 27 millivolts, but because it's across a 1 ohm resistor, the millivolts directly translate to milliamps. So 27 millivolts in this one case is the same thing as 27 milliamps. And there's one on the right where I measured 25 milliamps of current. Here I measure 30. Why the discrepancy? Because when you're measuring current at the cathode, it also includes screen current, which is typically about 5% of the total. Now in this case, I know that the actual plate current in this EL34 is 25 milliamps as the amp is currently biased, which is on the cool side, but that's probably for the best in this amp. Where the extra 5 milliamp of current come from? It's through the screen supply from here to ground. And it's going through the cathode through this resistor. I'm simplifying a little bit, so if anyone wants to go, well, actually, get your own channel. This is for other guitarists to understand. So that's why these measurements will always be about 5% higher than the actual current draw, which is good. It means that people will look at a tube chart and say, I'm going to idle that about 65% idle or 70% idle because the internet told them so, and you're actually biasing your amp at 60 or 65% idle typically, which is good because don't believe those charts on the internet that say 70% is automatically the goal. 70% can be great, but what if the wall voltage changes and then you're at 80? So anyway, that's my little bias diatribe. I don't find these external test points that useful because I don't use them myself, and most owners have no business setting the bias on their amp. Now, we are still left with, why did this thing fail to begin with? Why did I detect smoke even though everything seems okay? I see one suspicious thing in this amp. I hope it's not the case because it'd be a relatively expensive repair due to the way the amp is built. Let's see if I can get this at an angle where you can see it. Let me pause this. You have two 33 microfarad 500 volt caps. Try that again. You have two 33 microfarad 500 volt caps. And the top of this cap has got a vent cover, which is just a piece of plastic which the shrink wrap then kind of holds in place. It lets the top of the cap, which is metal, expand and contract as needed. And the tops of these cans actually have a little crosshatch in them. More on that. This one has got a bulge that this one does not have. And it's possible that when this heat shrink was done, this just did not conform as well. Do it with my finger. I'm not feeling a big bulge in there. But sometimes that's an indication that the top vent of a cap is bulging up and that cap is bad. I don't think that's the case here, but I'm gonna let this run for a few hours and verify normal operation. So if you ever bring your amp to me or to some other good conscientious tech and you get a bill for the full bench fee and then it says changed 2 fuses, this is what a good tech does. It's not that I changed 2 fuses and that's it. It's that I made sure that there was a reason those fuses weren't going to blow again. Fuses are a potential sign of a big problem, and I want to eliminate big problems. So let me show you one more thing. That's the crosshatch pattern on a radioelectrolytic, and when they bulge, those open up, just like they look like the mouths of the worms on Dune. Terrible movie, great worms. So these things are not really well built. As I said, the solder pads are really thin. Those resistors you see there are good, but they're very inexpensive. Mallory 150Ms are great. Those DME caps are great. Mallory's aren't so great when they get burned. Sozos aren't so great when they get burned. And to me, these amps are built very sloppily. They're extraordinarily complicated for what they actually do. They're promising an awful lot of stuff in a small box. And let's see if I can get this to focus. If you have one of these, and all these diodes are 1N481s, whatever, I can't remember what the number is, 1N4148s, that's it. Change them or have them changed to 1N4007s. You can leave the smaller diodes on these relays, but here in the rectification, you really don't want those underpowered diodes. Last tour of the amp, unless I find some magic smoke coming out at some point in the next couple of hours. If it doesn't make the magic smoke, it'll probably go home tomorrow. And then the owner will wonder why I billed for 2 hours to change 2 fuses.